Welcome, dear friends, to Kardec Radio and What is Spiritism? This is a program dedicated to you. You want to know more about Spiritism, right? That's why you're tuned into Kardec Radio. That's where everything began. Kardec. He wrote the book in 1859, What is Spiritism? And has a wonderful mind, wise as can be. He writes, for those who want a summary. But as an educator, he talks with us in a dialogue format. He's not saying this is how it is. He allows us to ask questions and he addresses them. It's a conversation with Kardec. What an honor for us. So join us now. I know you may be right now going through your social media, going through things. Breathe. Allow yourself to be in a different dimension. Visualize the codifier of Spiritism seated in front of us and explaining to us things that either we have a doubt or we are in hesitation or in true resistance. That's valid as long as we're willing to learn. He talks to those who are willing to learn. He used to be an educator, and as a spiritist, he continues the journey educating our souls. So today, we have a beautiful, beautiful group with us. Friends who come, have studied Spiritism for a while, and now are sharing with us more. We're not going to tell you what you may read simply, but the breakdowns of it. We're studying chapter 2 when Kardec's talking to the skeptic. They're various topics. Today we're talking about people who dissent. At a time when people are talking about the validity of dissension. Can we dissent? Yes, as long as we're not violent, as long as we are peaceful, and as long as we use our reasoning. But what about people who commit frauds, who lie? That's what we're talking about today again, but in a greater extension. To begin this dialogue, we go all the way to Europe right now, thanking our friend Charles Kempf, who is also host at Kardec Radio. Thank you, Charles, for being with us, especially at this hour. How are you?
Hello, Vanessa. Thanks for having me. I'm very well, thanks. Everything, very happy to be here again, sharing these moments with you.
Yeah. Charles, let me ask you, since you're in France, you're like, the connection with Kardec, everything began in France. How do you feel when you see people outside of France talking about Spiritism, and especially Kardec's books?
It's always a very big pleasure for me because, sometimes when we have in a country some good person, this good person is more admired outside of the country than in the country itself. Huh? I don't know if there is an expression. In French, we say nul n'est prophète en son pays. I think the same exists in English.
Yeah.
And so it's sure that when I go particularly to Latin America, but not only, to Portugal, for instance, or some other countries, I'm always very happy and positively surprised to see how they admire this French, I would say, world citizen, which was born in French, and how they have a deep understanding of his teachings. And in fact, much more than in France. And by the way, this is helping us, because our President Macron
Yeah.
traveled to Brazil recently.
Yes.
And there was a new in the newspaper saying the French guy most admired in Brazil is not Zidane, is not De Gaulle, it is Allan Kardec. So it's very surprising for the French
Oh
people.
my gosh, that's incredible. And then people are like, Kardec, oh my gosh, so now they have to go after.
Yes, they have to inform themselves a little bit to see who it was and what are the things.
That's amazing.
A lot of
That's
people know the name of Kardec, but much less.
So we'll talk about this skepticism that may happen in people's minds sometimes just because they don't want to think about it, right? But let me
Exactly.
open the room for one more friend, our dear friend John DeRosa. It's his birthday. Yes, happy
I,
birthday, John.
Happy birthday.
And
I
yes,
could I,
mhm,
I couldn't help listening to Charles about Allan being so popular in Brazil, being and the association with him being from Paris. It just the thought given to me was, you can't be the prophet in your own home, and that
Ah,
it
yes.
happens in France,
Mhm.
right? But every place else, we can advertise Mr. Mr. Kardec, and thank goodness for that movie. Kardec is on Netflix. It
yes.
really is a very positive and so easy to relate to people that we talk to.
And it's interesting as people are watching us. John recorded the Spirit's book, and he was the voice of Kardec for all the whole Spiritist book, the Spirit's book. And Steve Shepard and John DeRosa worked on this project week after week for 3 years. They completed it. You can go to either YouTube at Kardec Radio and listen to the podcasts, or you can go to SoundCloud. The book is there. Oh, I don't have time to read. Well, play it, listen to it, listen to the book. It's the audiobook. And you have the opportunity of reflecting about life. Talking about reflection of life, people may come across not knowing, majority of people on earth don't know about the teachings of Spiritism, don't know of Spiritism. They are investigating about the Spiritist ideas and everything. But we are here in this single opportunity of getting to know more about what it is, how it can transform our lives. Some people resist, others don't want to think about it. So Kardec said before, if you don't want to think about it, well, then there's no conversation. But you want to talk about it, then there are those who have different opinions. So in these first parts of the chapter, John, what would you highlight from what you read in the conversation between the skeptic and Kardec? What was a major
But,
highlight for you?
well, what jumped out to me was this couple of sentences. But tell me what science is there that at its start did not give rise to dissenting opinions until its principles became clearly established. And dissent, uh, isn't this dissent will present today in the sciences that have been around much longer? So that was what struck me, because he's so right about these dissenting opinions when was a new science. And this, I think there's somewhere in here where it talks about when he wrote this, it was like 10 years after uh, the codification of Spiritism. So here we are still. he recognized that he needed something to really clarify what Spiritism is to people, and really delve into it, and of course give us an insight into how to address people that have the difficulties with it. And here he clearly indicates that it's been around, and other scientists have gone through the same type of situation. So that was the first thing that struck me in this dissenting opinions.
Yes. And for you, Charles, I mean, when he's talking about the skeptic and this visitor talks about, um, the fact that this science that Kardec is proclaiming Spiritism to be may be different in different places. Doesn't it say something? And then Kardec says, you know, the differences are more informed than in essence. Actually, there is no difference. What did catch your attention in Kardec's approach to this point of view of the skeptic person?
Yeah, I think one of the what struck me most is the profound or deep respect he has for the opinion of the skeptical guy. He says, okay, that's your opinion, that's what you think. I respect your way of thinking. Now I will explain you how I am thinking, giving the arguments, but I will not force or insist to anything. He's not here for doing a brainwashing. He's just here to inform, to give some information. And then the guy, he does whatever he wants. He's totally free to do whatever he wants with the information. But the arguments he's using, as John just mentioned, are very strong. What happened at that time, when the spiritualism started in US mostly, in UK, and Spiritism in French. I think you commented this in a previous live. They agreed on a lot of basic points, but there were some points on which they did not agree. For instance, reincarnation. Reincarnation was admitted by the French Spiritists, but took a long time, almost a century or more, with some doubts for the spiritualists. And it's not by chance that Ian Stevenson reincarnated in US, to make a scientific study. Look, the approach I had for investigations, even birthmarks and whatever, thousands of cases, which are showing that reincarnation makes sense. And this is exactly the argument that Kardec is using. That at the beginning of a science, there are some people thinking a little bit different. It's just natural. We are all different, so we all think different. But at least we agree on fundamentals. And this is what must unite us. And for the points for which we have a different appreciation, it's the fair, clear, open discussion in full respect of the other's opinion.
So let me ask you this. Kardec, I know he was an educator, so he had tact. Like he was tactful, dealing with children and people who didn't know. But knowing so profoundly about him, Charles, you mentioned like he allows the person to be free to make a choice. Because sometimes educators are forceful, but Kardec wasn't like this. Right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the method of Pestalozzi, where he studied, and that the same method he applied later on in the institutes or schools he was leading in France, was exactly based on this. It was not just, okay, read the book, take it by heart, and then put it back automatically. No, that's not that method of teaching. The method of teaching was observe the phenomenon, think about, and come yourself to the conclusion of the laws of nature. And this is basically the method he applied when he started investigating this phenomenon. And similar method was applied, of course, by the pioneers when they were investigating, for instance, the phenomenon in Hydesville in 1848 and the following years. They simply made observation neutrally, without having a preconceived opinion, and came to the conclusion. And this is then what they were writing in their books. not behaving like the people with preconceived ideas, whether from the religious side or the skeptical scientific side. But no, the right scientific position is these are natural phenomena. You have to observe them as they are, and then make the reasoning without preconceived ideas to find out what are the best possible explanations. And this is exactly what Kardec did, and what he is inducing the skeptical and the oppositors to do as well. It's pure scientific method.
So interesting. As you mentioned about Ian Stevenson, today a friend of ours, Anna Paula, sent to us an article that was just in the Washington Post. Children who remembered their previous lives. It was just in the newspaper today, talking exactly as you said about the research, extensive research that has been happening at University of Virginia, right here where we are, the state of Virginia. And the director of the department, Jim Tucker, who was interviewed at Kardec Radio years ago, he talks extensively about his research and the data, which is compelling. And yet, people are still asking questions. But let me read something Kardec said. What science is there that, at its start, did not give rise to dissenting opinions until its principles became clearly established? So, any science goes through the process of understanding the replication of the very same research and the establishment in the mainstream science. Regarding Spiritism, John, he says that naturally the phenomena shows up, the spirit phenomena, but it takes time for people to understand what is behind it. And he says, in order to destroy this science, it's not enough to simply say it's absurd. It cannot be. It's necessary to prove categorically that the phenomena do not and cannot exist. And precisely, this is precisely what no one has done. So, what do you think about this, John, when he
Well, this
points that out?
this is exactly what I highlighted, that last couple of sentences. Yeah, because that's so true. You cannot. What's so fascinating is there's so much evidence on the other side that the spirits do exist, and yet people still, in their ignorance, still want to just categorically throw it away and say no, it doesn't. And then those poor souls have to die and find out on the other side what it's all about. But he says it so well. It is necessary to prove categorically that the phenomena did not exist and cannot exist. This is precisely what no one is, and we know that to be so true. But I was that article was in the Washington Post about past lives. It's really fascinating how, before I got into Spiritism, this kind of shows you how the spirits work. I went into a bookstore, and this is going back some 20 years, and I can't even remember what I was looking for, but I stumbled across Stevenson's book about the adults that remembered their past lives after the age of 7 or 8, and I got that book. I read the sort of the synopsis that they had in there, and I always remember that little incident because it was a prelude to getting involved in Spiritism. That wonderful evidence that life exists after death, and the fact that there are reincarnation after reincarnation. I mean, it's just, again, the evidence is there for the people, and they can't prove otherwise. It's just like I said, it's just the opposite, because there's so much proving the fact that there is this phenomena that goes on.
Yes. So we want to tell people, if people come to you, they doubt it, they question, it's their right to question, to ask. But it's also our right to be quiet. When we see that curiosity is just gonna make us waste a lot of energy. When people say, but how do you believe it? They don't want to think about it. They are just sarcastically saying that. So let them be. Don't go there. Kardec never wasted his time with that type of person. Why? Because he respected them deeply. So we cannot waste our vitality, our vital fluid, in matters of this nature. And for people who come and simply say it's an absurd, say, well, prove it otherwise. Can you prove it otherwise? Oh, but I don't know if it exists. Okay. If you, it's your opinion. We're talking about things that we're reflecting, researching, and studying. And we have compelling research, but there is no research proving otherwise. Right? So it's very important. It begins with God and everything else. When people say, I don't believe in God, okay, it's up to you. But nobody has ever proved that God doesn't exist. Right? And Kardec had that rationale. Is important for us, we recommend go to your phone and download the book, What Spiritism. Look how beautiful it is. Let me show the cover. So beautiful and so easy. You can go there, flip the pages, read it, and understand what hasn't been understood and may change our lives. So, Charles, when we keep reading about the dialogue, the skeptic talks to Kardec about people that may produce the same phenomena. He says, well, hasn't people produced similar phenomenon out of Spiritism? And Kardec says, simply because something can be imitated doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. I mean, his rationale is so to the point. And he says something that is quite striking. Only malevolence and remarkable ill will would compare Spiritism to magic and sorcery, since Spiritism repudiates their purpose, practices, formulas, and mystical words. At a day and age, Charles, where Harry Potter is in vogue and has been for so many decades, what would you say?
Yeah, I mean, it's I would say it's just common sense, isn't it? Huh? The reasoning, which consists in saying, I don't believe in it, so it doesn't exist, is definitively not a scientific reasoning, isn't it? Huh? It's just an opinion. Okay, you are free not to believe in something. But the fact you do not believe in something is absolutely not a demonstration that the thing does not exist. Huh? It's the same as you just told. It's not because you can imitate something that the thing does not exist. It's not a demonstration.
Mhm.
And interestingly, a lot of people who are making this reasoning, which is absolutely against the scientific openness which is needed, they, on the other hand, they follow the materialist paradigm. So only physical, tangible matter is existing. There is nothing which exists out of that. Again, it's an opinion. It's even a dogma, because nobody ever proved, as you have said, Vanessa, that God does not exist, or that some form of matter which is different than the matter currently studied by science and by physics, amongst others, does not exist. And today we see more and more evidences on the opposite side, isn't it? Huh? You have this manifesto for a post-materialist science, which was done, I think, in Texas, where somewhere with Mario Beauregard and a couple of others, and several hundreds of known scientists have signed it. And there is also a book which came out recently, The Science of Life After Death, from Alexander Moreira Almeida and Humberto Schubert Coelho, which is exactly showing that this dogmatic approach to say only matter exists, the rest is just a question of belief, which is not matter of science, is deeply anti-scientific, and showing also all the phenomena who are somehow anomalies in this paradigm and which are strongly and more suggesting that there is indeed something different. In France, also, recently, a book has been written about God. What are the proofs of the existing of superior force or intelligence in the universe? And there are a lot of scientific arguments going in this direction. But I would say the step, we went already in a change of paradigm when we went from the mechanical Newtonian physics to the the Einstein physics, with the relativity, and also in the quantum mechanics. But these steps to go from the matter, tangible matter, to spiritual matter is even bigger. And there is, of course, a lot of resistance against that, but it just change resistance. As soon as someone is thinking openly and without preconceived ideas to it, very quickly this person comes to the same reasoning and similar conclusions of that where Kardec reached during the codification, isn't it? And what is also amazing is it was 167 years ago, the Spirit's book. And the Genesis was more than 150, almost 160 years ago. And look, after all this, did ever someone demonstrate that one of the principle of the basic principles of the Spiritist body of knowledge is false? None. I have not seen anything. I even question more. In the Spiritist philosophy, which is a consequence of all these facts, these phenomena, and this paradigm, it's absolutely consistent. Did someone one day find any inconsistency in this body of knowledge in the philosophical aspect? No, just statements, as we can see here in the dialogue. Yeah, it is imitated, so everything is imitated. Or I don't believe in it, so it is not. But this is not an argument. Sorry, this is just a personal opinion, which we must respect. But it's all but a demonstration or a reasoning showing that there is a mistake somewhere in the Spiritist body of knowledge. And Kardec was even wise to say, even if you would find such a demonstration that Spiritism body of knowledge is wrong in some points, but not just an opinion, a demonstration, Spiritism would immediately change and adopt what has been demonstrated and recognized. So nothing is cast in concrete. Everything can be is open for discussion, but not just negations or contrary opposite opinions or whatsoever, but on neutral reasoning and demonstrations. This, yes, has validity, and it is just simply applying the scientific method, nothing else.
Exactly. So let's see, 167 years later, Spiritism is more spread out in the world, has many more people studying the teachings, following the precepts, and continuing the movement of this deep awareness. In the US alone, right, John? You've been in the Spiritist movement since 2011, 2012. You see already more and more people than before, right?
Oh yes, definitely. Well, we've had a lot of people come through the center. That's for sure.
Yeah.
And uh, we now are, I guess, on a rebuilding process because we're getting more people coming than we've had before. And we see a lot of like that article you were mentioning from the Washington Post. You see a lot of information coming out, like Charles was mentioning about existence of spirits in the afterlife and the science behind it. So much science behind it. Just looking at the University of Virginia, they're just boatloaded with past lives and we haven't talked about near-death experience. They do that research on too, and all the sophisticated equipment they have to look at the mind, what the mind's doing, or I should say the brain at its time. So the word's getting out because it's I think one way you can see is some of the members we have, even their spouses, are coming into the fold, which is really nice. Where the wife or the husband might be into the Spiritist literature, but the spouse is always a little bit hesitant. But then you see the acceptance of it, especially from one member I know. They have a child who can see spirits, and so the father doesn't have any choice but to accept the fact that this phenomenon exists. So it's gonna just like today I was telling Vanessa earlier before we started this little broadcast about a lady I was talking to over the phone, and it was about something I ordered from the company she represents, and I made a reference to Thought and Life book by Manuel that we all love, and she really just hopped on board of that thought and life, and she really identified with it. And I mentioned the Kardec radio movie, and she was just in love with it. And I told her I'd send her the link to the Spiritism Society of Baltimore, which has 5 codified books of Spiritism available in free PDF form. And she thanked me. She said, "Well, it's really nice of you to go ahead and do that for me." And this is how we get the word out to people. Not intentionally. I had no intention of talking Spiritism with it, but the conversation led into it, and that's how you get people to become aware of Spiritism without really pushing it down the throat, which I have done, unfortunately, in the past. I try not to do that anymore.
Yes, it's interesting. Kardec is so versed and so deeply rooted in culture that in this chapter he mentions about Macbeth, Shakespeare's play. And right this week, my daughter's school was at DC, the Shakespeare's Theater, presenting this play, and I saw 10 schools performing Macbeth. And I said, "Man, as Kardec says, it's such a spiritist, has so many spiritist ideas in there, and people talk about it. And in America alone, we're always so driven to the things of the supernatural, to the things of, but at the end of the day, we don't do much with it. People just leave it as is, right? Everybody experiences spirit perception. Everybody has their experiences, but people play it down. But more and more people are willing to understand what it is. With the movement of Netflix, many more programs are coming about to talk about it, to discuss these things. And in this particular saying, Kardec says many critics do not have a more serious basis. And I think as we come to this dialogue with the skeptic, we need to identify who is asking us. We can't simply regard that person who is seriously asking and willing to learn just like somebody else who is playfully talking about it. And he says the depth of the matter is many critics don't have serious basis. And on whom does the ridicule fall, if not on those who proceed so carelessly? So I think that Kardec's attitude, his approach, puts respect. He respects the person, but first and foremost, he respects himself. He respects the science that he organized for all of us and says, far from being bruised, to show that we're not that sensitive. Not at all. Far from being bruised, Spiritism's credibility has grown because of the publicity that all these ruses have provided by arousing the interest of a crowd of individuals who had never heard of Spiritism. So, as we go through a last round, Charles and John, would you like to lead us into this topic that he says? How do we stay strong and don't feel bruised, sensitive by the fact that people are not there yet? Let's not forget that 100 years from today, like before, 100 years ago, we had 1.5 billion people on Earth. At Kardec's time, we had even less. Now we have 8 billion people. It's a different time, different environment, different conditions, and yet the teachings are traveling farther and farther away. Should we at any point feel, because I see some people who say, I give up, people don't get it, and then they quit. What do you think, Charles, of people like that?
I would say maybe they never understood it or believed in it fully, huh? Because when you are how to say, after having studied for a long time, understood, questioned, looked for the consistencies, and you reach the conclusion, yes, it makes sense. Yes, it helped me a lot to become a better person. Yes, it helps me a lot to understand all what's happening in the world. Yes, it helps me a lot to overcome the natural difficulties of life. You get, how to say, a level of certainty of what you have reasoned and analyzed, which is quite strong, isn't it? And when you see that today in the world, of course, we are 8 billion. So there are only, I would say, a couple of tens, let's say 30 to 40 million of spiritists in the world. But it may seem very little, 0.4% or whatsoever of the population of the world. But when you see that, for instance, today in the world you have more spiritists than you have Jewish, it's already a significant step that Spiritist has reached. Like John Lennon, we can say, you may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. Far from that, isn't it? And you get a reasonable certainty of that. Then you just get the patients, the people who do not believe or who do not yet believe. You just need to respect them and to give them time to think a little bit more about it, to be faced with more phenomenons or happenings or maybe difficulties in their life, in order to come to it. Today we have, how to say, materialistic or consumeristic blinds. Most of the people, of these 8 billion people, when you are somewhere, you see a lot of people like in a shopping center or an airport or whatsoever. Then you start thinking, how many of these people are, for instance, even questioning, what am I? Am I just a bunch of cells governed by random biochemical reactions, or do I have a soul? Or questioning even what will happen the day I will die, because this day will come with 100% probability it will come. No, the people just have the blind. I'm consuming. I'm happy with my daily stuff and so on. Okay, you need to leave them time. But we can see when there is a crisis coming, like for instance COVID, the pandemic, then a lot of people start, where am I going to? And interestingly, in France, I don't know, certainly it's the same in US, came to seek to join Spiritist, or came to seek information about Spiritism during that moment. And the day we will have, how to say, a little bit big, we had a crisis already in 2008 or 2009 or whatsoever. We will have other crises, because the way we are behaving, the way we are consuming our own consumption of energies and of good, we know already that our planet does not have the resources for all that. We have to really make an effort to become leaner, more respectful of the nature, more, how to say it, sustainable. Sorry, I was seeking the word. Sustainable. Otherwise, something will collapse. We cannot continue like that. And that is exactly the moment, where the materialistic blinds are, by the limitation of the material resources of our planet, giving an opening to think a little bit different. What future do we want? And this is the essential point. And Kardec was, very ahead of his time. Everything is ready. Everything is okay. In the form we can criticize. It has been maybe a too Christian color or whatsoever. But let's go to the basics, to the things themselves. Everything is. It's a new paradigm which is stable until now, which has, as I told, nothing has been demonstrated as to be false in it, just opinions and things like that. So we have to be patient. We were also skeptical some time ago. So we understood now, so we have to be patient and to give a chance to the skeptical people, give them time also necessary to understand the same, and also to have all the benefit out of it. Because really, Spiritism is deeply in favor of peace, against any type of violence, fraternity, whatever, without boundaries or whatever. These are the ideals of the Spiritist body of knowledge, which yes, are sustainable. Our current behavior is not. So the change will happen and will come. So we are just here to slowly but surely prepare the field for that. And thank you, Kardec, for having induced us to this way.
Right. Love it. Have to be patient. Patient, right, John? Talking
Yes.
about patience and patience. What do you think?
About being bruised or about having patience?
Yeah, both.
It's funny as Charles was talking about being patient and so forth. What the thought that we had was how each day things happen to us, and if you really think or reflect, as we like to talk about reflecting, you see how things fall into place for you when you're aware of things. Even some of these mishaps that happen to you are in a way of guiding and protecting us, and that's what that was the thought. Being grateful for how God helps us throughout this day. The other thought, as far as how we are affected, my path to Spiritism was so beautiful. It was just like all the logic fell into place for me, because I studied Ayurvedic science before, and then I found out the teacher went to Brazil and met John of God, and when he came back, that was my pathway into Spiritism and Vanessa at the Spiritist Society of Virginia. So I can see all the steps in my life, and that's the beauty of Spiritism. So when people have a difficult time with it, it's like I use that expression. It's like water off a duck's back. It doesn't really bother me. Where I get excited is people that are interested in Spiritism, and then I'm really, 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 really happy to be able to share with them. And patience, as Charles has mentioned, is something that I've been trying very desperately to put into my playbook, to be patient with people, because I being so zealous about it. I guess I can be very overzealous about this topic, and it's because we feel so feel for people that don't have an understanding of this, and you want to share it with them, to at least plant a little seed with them, so they know a little bit. But again, you have to be, as you say, Charles, so respectful of people in there, and how they think at this particular time in their life. And as you say, eventually we all come to that conclusion, even if it happens to be at the moment we're going to have to pass on to the other side.
So in that mood of patience, which is so important, in that mindset, we would like to thank Kardec for laying out a very peaceful way of dialoguing about this. We are at a time when every argument becomes so heated up, and we need to calm ourselves down, to reason things of this depth, and really cherish it in our hearts, respecting people for the rights they have to think differently, but also respecting ourselves in the way that we chose to lead our lives. It's a two-way road. I'd like to invite Charles just to say your final comments as we wrap up the program today, inviting everybody to read these two excerpts in the chapter 2 of the book, What's Spiritism. Your final comment, please, Charles.
Yeah, I think this change of paradigm is heating up now. It will come. When you look to the population, you have 50% of the people already believing that in a certain way the life continues after the death. So they are coming to this spiritualist paradigm. The biggest resistance today still is in the intellectual or university areas, you know. The intellectual people are still resisting to this change. And even if you challenge some of them, they say, no, intimately, I agree with you, but I cannot tell it openly because it's still not yet, say, accepted in the mainstream. But it's, again, a question of patience, a question of time, deep respect, because the goal of the Spiritist body of knowledge is to help mankind to become better and also to help the human societies to become better and peaceful. There is no other goal. And with a profound and deep respect for all other beliefs, without thinking we are more or better than the others, because what is important is the result. Are you a better person? Yes. So whatever the belief you have, if you manage to be a better person every day a little bit more, you are on the right way.
Wonderful. To be a better person, that's our focus. And for you, John?
Oh, the last thing I wanted to add was the end of this section on simulated spiritual phenomena. When you mentioned about the person that, let me see if I can get it here, where they were at a concert, and that paragraph where they would go to a concert of Macbeth and saying the witches are going to come out, and then there's a spiritist there that confronts them, and I circled that particular paragraph and I said, what a perfect example of how God works in your life. And it was just so beautiful. And you know, Charles sort of said it all. Can't really add to that. Just total agreement. Is that it is spreading in so many different ways, and we always like to see the coherence of Spiritism with practically anything that we get involved with nowadays. It's just, you know, you just see it. It's there in black and white. I was reading a book that one of my relatives gave to me called Dear Universe, and it's a book of like 200 meditations. And I was reading one about forgiveness and one about healing, and it's like they took the pages right out of the Spiritist literature on forgiving and death. So you're right. It's happening, and it's happening in the literature, and it's happening with people, with discussions with people. And again, just being patient is the proper way to proceed.
Yes. So for those who are watching us, please read the book. Go to the What Spiritism book, chapter 2. We're discussing about the dialogue between Kardec and the skeptic person. The most important part is to talk with, to have this dialogue. That's what we need to resume on earth. Very peaceful conversations, fair conversations, conversations in which people extend to each other the right to think, the right to feel, and the right to embrace what is more accommodating for them. So we want to thank Charles. Thank you very much, Charles, for being here with us again. Right?
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And thank you, John DeRosa. Happy birthday to you today. And we're going to repeat this program at 10 p.m. today, Eastern Time. So if you missed it, don't worry. At 10 p.m., you have another chance to watch this program and delight yourself with the opportunity of listening to the conversation between Kardec and the skeptic and our comments about it. We want to thank our dear friend Daisy, who is here, who was able to share the article, the interview that Kardec Radio did a while ago with Jim Tucker on reincarnation, a topic that we discussed today. We wish you many blessings, friend, and until next time, in What is Spiritism?